All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College School podcast. Today, here, me and Nick will be doing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Wisconsin Badgers. Looking at this coaching staff, season 65-23 record overall. Bobby Ingram, he comes over from Baltimore to be the first-year offensive coordinator here for the Badgers. He was a tight end wide receiver coach with the Ravens since 2014. Previously worked with Chris at Pittsburgh from 2012 to 2014. And then Jim Leonard, one of the nation's top defensive coordinators. He's been with the Badgers since 2016. He's been a defensive coordinator since 2017. Look at this offense, Nick. Seems to be the same story every year with Wisconsin. Dynamic running game, followed by a struggling quarterback, Graham Mertz. He was elite in his first career start 2 years ago against Illinois. Saw him complete 95% of his passes with 5 touchdowns. He's been quite poor ever since, though. Struggled the rest of 2020. He was even worse this past season. Completed only 59%, 150 yards per game, 10 to 11 TD to INT ratio. 4 of those picks came against Notre Dame. He also had a fumble, I believe. Mertz, he was a 4-star, I believe, coming out of high school. I think he's a talented ball player. Just to see, seems to be a poor scheme fit, I think, here at Wisconsin.
I definitely agree with you. I think the scheme is sort of the problem here for Graham Mertz. He has the talent, but I just haven't seen out of him at all in college. 10 touchdowns to 11 interceptions last year. Only 60% completion percentage, below 2,000 yards passing. Just poor across the board. Didn't really look comfortable at all. Makes some poor has poor decision-making skill. The 11 interceptions is seriously concerning. He gets bailed out by the running game a lot on this Wisconsin offense, and it's definitely tough to see.
Yeah, like you said, he's been very bad at making decisions. Hasn't been quite accurate. But it's weird because in the Illinois games, you saw so many good plays. Doesn't matter who the opponent was that day. He was just making so many good plays, and he hasn't looked the same since. Fortunately enough for him, though, he has the nation's top running back duo to hand the ball off to. Ches Malusi, the Clemson transfer last year, shined. Nice slasher with a quick first step. Impressive burst, gets downhill in a hurry, 815 yards and 8 scores in 9 games. And then alongside him is Braylon Allen. He's kind of comparable to that Derrick Henry, 6'2", 238. Heck of an athlete for being that big. He's a converted linebacker. He uses that violent nature here as a runner. He stays low, cuts with authority. Didn't do much of anything in the first 4 games, and then they unleashed him. He had 100-plus yards in 8 of the last 9 games. Ends the year with over 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. What do you make of this running back duo?
I love Allen, super talented back, 1,268 yards last year, 12 touchdowns on the ground. Could be a little bit involved in the passing game as well. I like this. I like the combination they have here because they kind of rely on both to do different things. I love the speed that they each possess, but they also seem to have different size characteristics that can really add a different impact to each running back. I like Allen a lot. I like to see him step forward and continue to take that lead role this year.
This offense struggled early in the year, finally started churning it out on the ground. Got stonewalled late in the year versus Minnesota, though. They had, I think, less than 50 yards rushing in that game. So this duo has great potential, but at the same time, when you're one-dimensional, it's hard to get things going. But good thing for them is they get 3 guys back on the offensive line I really like. Jack Nelson, Tyler Beach, Logan Brown, another 2 linemen drafted in the past 2 years. So they're still developing these guys quite well. What do you think of this offensive line that every year seems to be one of the nation's best, but still the offense is quite one-dimensional?
I like the left side of the line a lot this year. Tyler Beach and Jack Nelson. I like what they provide. These guys are returning, have some good experience as well. I like to see them step up a little bit. Nelson, a bit of the inexperience, but he's definitely grown in the game so far, and he could really use the time and get some more reps in. This offensive line is going to be solid like they are every single year. They're going to give a lot of holes for the running back. It just seems to be that the quarterback play is really what lets this offense down for Wisconsin because they make poor decisions under center across the board. The running back has always been a strong position for the Badgers. They always seem to pump out really talented backs who seem to dominate at the college level. And I think the offensive line definitely helps with that. I love the way they coach these guys. The experience on the offensive line is very strong, and I expect them to have another great season there.
Despite Graham Mertz's struggles, I don't think it's going to get any easier. Very young, inexperienced wide receiver group. I think the top 3 pass catchers from a year ago are gone. Shamiri Dyke, top returning pass catcher, 19 grabs for 272 yards last year. Clay Cundiff, he was the 5th leading pass catcher last year, 2nd returning pass catcher, and guess what? He only had 3 grabs for 86 yards. That is very concerning for a team like this. Marcus Allen, Skylar Belt, figure to be next up a wide receiver. They only combined for 4 grabs last year. Keontae Lewis, a UCLA transfer, comes over. Not much experience there either. How do you feel about this receiving group? Because I'm not very happy with it. They lose Jake Ferguson and then guys like Danny Davis. Very concerned because this passing game only averaged 150 yards per game last year, and now they lose everybody and not a lot is coming back.
I really get concerned and kind of try to struggle to figure out who's going to step up for this offense and catch these passes. I like Cundiff. I think he's a solid guy. I love the size he possesses, but I just don't think that he's quite ready to make that step up. Only had 3 grabs last year. 86 yards is impressive, but only three grabs throughout 3 games for him. I get a little concerned with this. I just think that Graham Mertz does not really have anyone to throw to, and I don't blame the kid. He's going to struggle if he's no one to throw to. His talent is completely depleted at wide receiver. I just don't know if I see anyone on this roster can step up and make plays for him.
Looking at the Badgers' defense, this is one of the top defenses last year. They actually led FBS in run defense, giving up only 61 yards per game. That is elite numbers, less than 2 yards per carry. Georgia, they only allowed like 85, and they had 60 more carries against their defense on the year. So I think that was the nation's top run defense. But Wisconsin was not far behind them. This, front seven they roll out is every year seems to be great, but this year it's going to be a little challenging. They only get 3 starters back on the unit entirely. Keanu Benton at nose, though, a player I love. It's a guy they fully unleashed last year. Sturdy at his position of 6'4", 317. 5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Isaiah Mullins, he's the other starter coming back. Coming off a career year, really. He's a fifth-year player, played a ton of ball in his career. Those guys do the dirty work. Rodas Johnson, he's expected to step up at defensive end and be a starter. Isaac Townsend, James Thompson, they've both been around for a bit now. Very similar size. Thompson 6'5", 290. Townsend 6'5", 280. So they're going to provide some edge depth. There's not much there in terms of depth, but there's plenty of size. Gio Paz, another one of those guys, 6'3", 310. They're on the interior defensive line. So I hope that they get back. Also at linebacker, I was such a big fan of this linebacker group last year, and they delivered. Return only one guy, though, Nick Herbig, 64 tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss, and 9.5 sacks. Did a little bit of everything. Great motor, hits hard, one of the hardest workers in the building. These outside linebackers do such a good job of collapsing. It's a new look linebacking core, Nick, and then the defensive line has some question marks too. So how are you feeling about this front seven that year after year seems to be one of the nation's best?
Very talented front seven. They seem to always find the right guys who can make the plays for him. Nick Herbig, solid player, 4 pass breakups, a fumble recovery, and 2 forced fumbles last year on top of the 9.5 tackles for loss. I expect a huge year out of him. I expect him to lead the team in tackles. I like Isaiah Mullins a lot. 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, in addition to 24 tackles last year. I love the experience he has. Played a whole lot of football. This will be his year to shine, step up. I expect him to be in the 7.5 tackles for loss, and maybe 6 or 7 sacks as well. Super talented player. I think he can break out this year.
CJ Gotts, he's another guy I think will step out and break out. Redshirt senior, 6'3", 243. He's going to slide into a starting role outside linebacker. The inside linebacking position, though, they've produced some really good sack numbers the past few years. They love to get these guys involved. Leonard's scheme, highly inclusive of these inside linebackers. Jordan Turner, he showed nice flow to the ball, good abilities in coverage last year. Excited for him. And Tatum Grass, he's the most experienced linebacker on the team. So we'll see what happens. I don't expect much fall off because, like you said, they seem to always find the right guys to make plays, and I think that's going to be no different this year. I think a slight step back is certainly expected. Looking at the defense, looking at the secondary, Wisconsin, they lose 4 starters, but I'm really not that worried. They also lose a few long-tenured safeties. They replaced them with 2 seniors that have been in the program, though. Travion Blaylock, John Torricino, 6 on the team with 35 tackles last year, also had 3 picks. They also added 3 transfers. Justin Clark, he's likely to play corner, multi-year starter from Toledo. Cedric Dort, 44 career games at UK. A lot of experience in the SEC, bringing that over to the Big Ten. That's a plus. And then Jay Shaw from UCLA, a really good tackler. Showcased the ability to locate the ball at UCLA. I haven't seen many schools pluck numerous former starters to come be starters in the same positional group. They got 3 guys that were starters at other schools to be starters here in the defensive secondary. They were fourth in FBS against the pass last year, 9 touchdowns to 16 picks. That's a really good ratio. Only allowed 55% comp rate. I think the secondary might get better, Nick. And if they don't, not much of a fall off is expected from me.
I love the portal work here from Wisconsin. I love the secondary they've built. I think they have some serious talent. I look at Torchino. I love what he can do. 3 tackles for loss and a half a sack last year. 35 total tackles for him. Super talented safety. I like what he can play at cornerback safety. They have some flexibility there with him. I like the leadership they have. I like the moves they made in the portal. I think this is a solid secondary that can get better than it was last year. You hit on it. They only had about 55% completion percentage last year against them. Not bad at all. I love the way they replaced it. So it is natural to expect a bit of a fall off considering the talent they lost, but I think they replaced it a lot with a lot of guys like for like who are solid. I think that they should be right where they were last year.
We'll get the schedule preview and the prediction. It's the same old different year for Wisconsin. We said the same thing about Iowa. These two will not complete on a national level until they convert to a more modern scheme on offense because they're too one-dimensional. They face these tough defenses on the road. They're maybe more talented defenses too than what their offense can sustain from a pass catching standpoint, and they lose games. And they win 9-10 every single year, make a New Year's Six bowl, make the conference championship game, but that's the ceiling. That's been the way every single year. They're going to struggle this year versus teams that can stop the run. OSU got lucky last year by not playing Wisconsin. I think they would have lost. They play them early in the year. this defense remains soft like it was last year, I think they're going to win that game with ease, even in Columbus, because this is a nasty running back duo. I've been saying since January when I saw that these two played early on in the year that this running back duo of Malusi and Allen, they might have a big edge, Nick. Michigan State, they can stop the run. Of course, Iowa can too. I think they lose those 3 games. But, if they don't, then I'd love to see this team make a run for the playoffs. It's just the ceiling's already been met. I don't see them doing much more until they fix the offensive scheme, I think.
Yeah, the scheme is definitely letting this team down. I think the quarterback play is super disappointing. I feel like that in those 3 games we've highlighted, at Ohio State, at Michigan State, at Iowa, if you fall behind early and you let's say you fall in a 14-point, 10-point hole in the first quarter, I don't see a way this offense can get back into it, because if you get the run game out of it, they're a one-dimensional offense, and you make Mertz have to make plays. He's going to struggle, going to make mistakes, turn the ball over. I don't think this team will lose at home. I think they'll be a really good team at home this year. I think they're going to defend their fort in Madison very well. But once you travel on the road, if you get behind early, those intimidating Big Ten crowds, I just don't think this offense has what it takes to get back into it. And the defense will get a little rattled, and they'll fall apart on the road in those tougher games against Ohio State, Michigan State, and Iowa.
Back in 2019, Jack Cohen and that passing attack were actually quite solid. I thought he had a very good year. Jonathan Taylor, of course, was elite. But again, what happens? They lose to Ohio State. They lost to them twice. They lost in the Rose Bowl. That was a really tough game. But still, same story every single year. I just think, until they change the scheme, that the ceiling is already met. That's 9 or 10 wins, which is not terrible. I mean, they're putting guys in the NFL as well, but I'd like to see this defense competing at a national level for a championship with Jim Leonard at the helm. So hopefully someday that can get figured out. Maybe that would completely destroy the philosophy of the football team that was only concerned. So any final thoughts, Nick?
I like this Wisconsin team. I think they're super solid year after year. They're good for 9, 10 wins every single year. But the offensive scheme is just going to continue to let them down, and until they switch something, they won't be able to compete at a national level.
It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.